You can see the clock over here. Ask him about how long that is. Check. Hi, everybody.
There we are. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, yeah. My name is Daniel Baird. I'm an event facilitator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Aninawa, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Red River Métis. Additionally, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. I just realized I'm getting some feedback there. And thank you all for joining us here tonight for the discussion of Road to Justice by Art Miki, featuring illustrator Geoff Miki. Let's give them a round of applause. And we're incredibly grateful to the Asian Heritage Society of Manitoba, as well as Japanese Canadian Legacies, for sponsoring this event as part of Asian Heritage Month. Let's give another round of applause for them as well. So to let you know how the evening will go, following my introduction, I'm going to be calling up your host today, Fortunato Lim, to introduce our special guests. Following that, there will be a reading and a discussion with Art, as well as a discussion over here in conversation with Geoff, Art, and Fortunato. Following that, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So please let those percolate throughout the night, and if you do have a question, just raise your hand high enough for me to see, and then I'll come by with this wireless microphone, simply to ensure that you're heard on tonight's live stream for the folks who are watching at home on the cameras here. Without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's host. Fortunato Lim is president of the Asian Heritage Society of Manitoba and has been an educator for over 20 years. He currently serves as the divisional principal of anti-racism initiatives for Seven Oaks School Division. Born in the Philippines and a Chinese and Filipino heritage, Fortunato moved to Canada in 1989 and now lives and works on Treaty 1 territory. Please join me in welcoming Fortunato Lim.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for sharing the land acknowledgement as well. Art, you still know how to bring people together. Again, just grateful to be here with you all. One thing I always share with folks is the best gift one can give and share is our presence in time. So I'm grateful for all of you being here tonight. I do also just want to extend to what Daniel talked about with regards to us being on Roostertown, because the book, Art's book, reflects a lot of that as well. So remembering Roostertown reminds us that stories of displacement and perseverance are not distant histories. They are part of the very ground we stand on. And as we speak of justice and belonging today, we honor the resilience of those families whose lives shaped this land, even when their presence was erased from the maps of the city. So it's an honor to be here as part of this special youth book launch for Road to Justice. The young reader's adaptation of Gamin, Perseverance, a Japanese-Canadian journey to justice, written by Dr. Miki. Dr. Miki's story is not just a chapter in Japanese-Canadian history, it's a lesson in resilience, justice, and the belief that ordinary people can make extraordinary change. Through this new version of his memoir, young readers across Canada will have the chance to learn about a moment in history that shaped our country, and to see how courage, community, and perseverance can transform injustice into action. Today, we'll speak with Dr. Miki about what inspired him to bring this story to a new generation, what lessons he hopes young people will take away, and how stories like this one can guide us as we build a more just and inclusive Canada. Alongside Dr. Miki, as mentioned, we also have his son, Geoff Miki, illustrator of his father's novel for young readers. My hope is Geoff would be able to share some of his creative process, and as well as stories about how it was to work closely with his dad. So, of course, you're all getting it here first, folks. The behind the scenes father and son collaboration, the creative process, and maybe even a little bit of family drama, we'll see. This month, as mentioned, also marks Asian Heritage Month in Manitoba, along with Jewish and Polish Heritage Month as well. Asian Heritage Month in Manitoba invites us into more than celebration. It calls into memory, responsibility, and relationship. For generations, Asian communities across this country and province have shaped the social, cultural, and economic life of Manitoba, even while facing exclusion, displacement, as in Art's story, and erasure, from early migration and labor contributions to organizing for justice and recognition. These histories remind us that belonging has not been freely given. It has been built, protected, and carried forward through community. In Manitoba, Asian Heritage Month was first organized in 2002 through community advocacy and through the leadership founded by Dr. Art Miki. A significant turning point came in last year in 2025 when the Asian Heritage Month Act was passed in legislation, formally recognizing May in provincial law. This moment marked more than acknowledgement. It affirmed the enduring presence, contributions, and histories of Asian Manitobans and the responsibility to ensure these stories are not sidelined, but sustained in our collective understanding. This spirit of reflection and responsibility is also captured in the idea of perseverance, or gaman, a principle central to Dr. Art Miki's story. It reminds us of the strength carried through generations, the long endurance in the face of injustice, and the commitment to move forward with dignity and purpose. As we enter this conversation today, we do so grounded in that legacy, honoring the past, engaging the present, and asking what it means to carry these stories forward with care, truth, and perseverance. Dr. Art Miki is a respected educator, community leader, and author who has spent his life standing up for fairness and justice in Canada. He was born in British Columbia, but when he was a child, his family, like many Japanese Canadians, was forced to move during World War II because of racist government policies. They eventually settled in Manitoba, where Art grew up, went to school, and became a teacher. As an adult, Art became a strong voice for injustice. He helped lead a national campaign that convinced the Canadian government to apologize and offer redress to Japanese Canadians for what had happened during World War II. This work changed Canada's history and started a cascade of acknowledgement and apologies from the Canadian government regarding the wrongs and harms done to many racialized communities. Dr. Miki received many honors for his lifelong work, including the Order of Canada, the Order of Manitoba, and the Order of the Rising Sun from Japan. His book, Gaman, Perseverance, a Japanese-Canadian Journey to Justice, last year in 2025 won the Canada-Japan Literary Award. So today we're celebrating his newest book, Road to Justice, a youth version of his memoir, written especially for young people like me, and I see a few educators here as well. It's a story about courage, community, and how standing up for what's right can make a difference. As mentioned, we also have Geoff Miki, is a Winnipeg-born visual artist whose work brings together realism, illustration, popular culture, music, comics, and a deep love of hockey. I think he got that from his dad, maybe a little bit. A graduate of the University of Manitoba with a Bachelor of Fine Arts honors degree in drawing, Geoff has spent much of his life producing art while also working in related creative fields, including picture framing and film. And he does also have a website. I know he has a card, I believe, to share with folks as well. His practice has expanded across watercolor, acrylic, colored pencil, pen and ink, scratchboard, printmaking, and mixed media. His recent work includes the Walkman art project. I don't know if the young folks here may not know what a Walkman is, but it was the coolest thing back in the day. The Walkman Art Project, a Japanese-Canadian Legacy Society-funded project exploring cassette, culture, memory, nostalgia, and personal connection through art. So Art, please join me in welcoming Art. I think he wants to say a few things before we start. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Art.
Well, thank you, Fortunato. Well, thank you very much for all of the people here this evening to share in this reading. I really appreciate it, and so thank you for coming. You'll notice that we put some of the prints, the illustrations that Geoff did around the room. They're in the book, but we thought that it might be interesting to look at the detail that's included in the illustrations. Every time I look at it, I keep thinking, wow, it had to take you a long time to put these things, put the illustrations together because there's such fine detail. The book that Road to Justice is one that I wrote because I've been going to a lot of schools. In fact, I'm going to several schools this coming week to talk about Japanese Canadian experience. And so the book is a supplement. I know teachers have told me that sometimes, very often, they have difficulty finding resources. And so I hope that this book will help. Let me read the introduction, because that, I think, summarizes the book itself. This is a story of my life's journey as a Japanese Canadian boy who eventually grows up to find justice in his community. I had never dreamed that one day I would be in Canada's history book. I grew up with a lot of questions and I did not know how to ask. Why did my parents and grandparents leave the beautiful farm in British Columbia? Why were my family and I living in a shack and working on a sugar beet farm in Manitoba? Why were my parents and grandparents so angry and sad? What had happened? I found out later in life that the Canadian government had hurt my family and thousands of other Japanese families living in Canada. The government made laws to take away our rights, our jobs, our homes. They put us in jails, work and internment camps, and later they moved us halfway across the country. They did this all because we were Japanese. This book tells what happened, why it happened, and how I learned to fight for justice. So that's sort of a summary. I'd like to just read an excerpt in my early years as I grew up in British Columbia. When I was 3 years old, my dad found work as a truck driver at Canal Logging Company. My parents, my younger brother Leslie Cuneo, and some of his relatives that are here this evening, as well as my baby sister Joan Mikiko. And I moved into a house in a logging camp in the mountainous area of Mission, north of Mission, BC. There were other workers' families living there. Dad drove a large logging truck on narrow roads cut into the side of the mountain. The trucks carried logs to the Fraser River to be sent to a sawmill. There the logs were cut into lumber. One day in May 1940, Dad was driving the logging truck past our house. Just on the other side of the road, which is sloped down because of the hilly terrain, Cuneo and I were playing with the neighbor's son. Without warning, the truck got a flat tire. The back of the truck tilted and huge logs began to roll off. The logs rolled down the slope towards us. My friend was the luckiest of the three of us and was not hurt. My brother and I were not as lucky. One of the logs rolled over Cuneo's leg and broke it. The branch sticking out from the rolling log caught the side of my face. It ripped open my left cheek, leaving half my face hanging from the jaw. It happened so quickly, I didn't know what had happened. Mom, who was with my baby sister Joan, saw the accident and quickly called for my dad. She told him to get the towels and cover my face because I was bleeding badly. For a moment, he didn't understand that I was hurt. When Dad saw what was happening, he was too stunned to reply. Mom ran into the house. She grabbed some clean towels to hold the part of my face that was torn and hanging. Mom called to my dad, but he didn't come close to me. He was too shocked to move. Go find the driver, she said. Get someone with a car to take Art to the hospital. I was carried up the hill to a house with towels wrapped around my face. They needed to get me to the hospital in Mission right away, but it was too far from the camp. The truck with the flat tire had blocked the narrow road, and so other cars would not be able to get out. As luck happened, just shortly after the accident, one of the men was returning to the camp from Mission. A group of men stopped Mr. Sato and made him quickly turn his car around. You need to drive Art and his mother to Mission Hospital right now, he was told by the men. When we arrived at the hospital, Mom told the doctor she wanted me to be taken to Vancouver for surgery. The doctor disagreed. No, he might die before you get to Vancouver, so you better not do that. He was afraid that I would die from the loss of blood. He didn't know how badly I was hurt. I was given drugs to stop the pain. He quickly sewed up my face. It took about 30 stitches. The accident left a large scar on the left side of my face. Years later, I would need an operation on my face. Mom returned to the camp with my sister. Grandma Miki came from Vancouver and stayed with me for 5 days at the hospital. When I was able to go back home, Cunio went to live with his grandmother Otto while his broken leg got better. Today, I feel lucky I lived through that terrible injury. It has helped me develop a positive view of life where I look for the good rather than the bad in situations and in people. It has encouraged me to get the most out of my life and try new and different things. I learned very early that failure was a normal part of learning, so I was not afraid to try something new. So that sort of gives you a little background. The other part that I'll just read shortly is the day that the announcement was made, when the Canadian government actually acknowledged that what happened to Japanese Canadians during the war is something that should have never happened. And the Prime Minister, I was in the House of Commons and to hear the words of the Prime Minister, and this is partly what he said. Mr. Speaker, nearly a half century ago, in the crisis of wartime, the government of Canada wrongfully incarcerated, seized the properties, and disenfranchised thousands of citizens of Japanese ancestry. We cannot change the past, but we must, as a nation, have the courage to face up to these historical facts. The apology made it clear to all of Canada that Japanese Canadians had done nothing wrong during the war. We had nothing to be ashamed of, and we no longer had to carry the government secret. The truth had finally been told. To hear the apology by the Prime Minister brought tears of joy. For me, it was a great relief that the struggle for justice was over. When the speech was complete, everyone stood and clapped. It was a moment to remember. People cheered, congratulated each other, hugged, kissed, and cried. It was a dream come true. After the announcement, I was taken to the Prime Minister's office to meet Brian Mulroney in person. I was nervous about how I should address him and was thinking of different ways. Should I call him Mr. Prime Minister or Honorable Brian Mulroney? While he came out of the room, he walked towards me, he held out his hand, and he said, "Hello, Art." As he shook my hand, my quick reply was, "Hello, Brian, nice to meet you." I no longer felt nervous. He was friendly and an easy person to talk to. As we were going downstairs to the room where the agreement was to be signed, I said to him, "It's taken a long time, but it's worthwhile waiting for." And his reply was, "It's taken this long for me to convince my colleagues that this was the right thing to do." I sensed that he was sincere and honest about this decision. So I'm going to stop there. And I know that Fortunato has a number of questions, and so I'll go and join this. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Art, for opening us up. I'm just wondering if you were able to share kind of what inspired you to create the youth version of your memoir.
Well, as I visited many schools, and I've been doing this for shortly after redress in 1988, I've been asked by teachers to come and talk to them, their students, about the Japanese Canadian experience. And what I recognized is that very few teachers knew about this part of history. But they also mentioned that there was very low resources that were available. And so I thought, well, this might be an opportunity to at least create something that I can use when I go into the schools as well. And I know next week I'm going to a couple of schools. In fact, one of the people who organized it is here today for Charleswood, Nicole Charleswood. But anyways, it was basically to provide additional resources and something that kids could easily read and learn about our history. And that was the intent. So naturally, when you write a children's book, you have to write it at a certain level that's easy to read. But you know, some of the seniors told me they enjoyed it because they can read it as well, and they can understand it. But anyways, it was good. So that was part of my motivation.
No, I thank you for that. And actually, when I first met Art, it was the first time that I've also learned about Asian Canadian history. I did not know about the Japanese Canadian internment. I did not know what happened to, with the Chinese Exclusion Act, all those things I did not learn in school, but I learned through just through Art. And so he's been advocating this for a long time, and we're very grateful for you to be sharing this through the youth version of it. Art, was there a particular story or moment from Gammon that you felt was essential to keep to the road of justice? Because I know your first book was much thicker than the youth book, and so how did you decide what you were going to include into this book?
Well, I think the part about being in the House of Commons and hearing the announcement in person was a real experience for me, and so I tried to capture that, and also meeting the Prime Minister. It was sort of frightening to, as you're meeting someone who's the head of the country, how do you address them? It was, and I worried about that. But when he came out and just said, "Hi, Art," it was a relief. And that way, it made me feel very comfortable. And I met Massimo Maroney a number of times after. And we've talked about this particular agreement as well. And so it was good to be able to share something with them. And he's very open when we talk about it.
I know when I was reading the book to Mike, he really like you sharing your stories when you were younger. Because I think, they also see that life then was much different than how they live now. And so that I also thought that was also really important. Geoff, I got a question for you. So as an illustrator, how did you approach visually representing experiences that, sometimes carry deep pain and memory? What responsibility did you feel in honoring those stories or your dad's stories?
Yeah, I guess in a way I was kind of secondhand affected by the whole internment and everything, but still, I mean, I know the whole story and we grew up with it and so knew all about it. But in the art, I basically wanted to keep it really simple and just easy to interpret. And some of the images I kind of took sort of the classic images, like the boats being all gathered up and all the beds in the arena. But also I wanted to keep it all in black and white because I thought it was sort of kept it more of that sort of raw type of look to it. And we were discussing trying to keep it more like sketchy looking too, so not too polished or not too slick. So.
And I imagine you were younger when your dad was, doing the redress process. And I'm curious to know, like, your experience of that, and then listening to your father's story through his writing. Was there anything you learned from that experience, you as a child, what you imagine your dad was doing, and then you reading it now as an adult, and maybe sharing with your kids as well?
Yeah, it really was really unique because it is sort of that behind the scenes type of growing up, and a lot of I guess the first NAJC office was probably in our dining room, and so a lot of we had kind of the office there, and a lot of the phone calls he'd have at night would be to politicians or to different people, and so we were kind of all right there, and so, sort of living through it.
Well, I should just mention at the beginning, when we were first involved, our living room was the office. Basically, our association didn't have a place, and so our home was the main office. And so the kids would have heard a lot of things that went around that happened. Our meetings were held in our house.
Yeah, and then the basement was kind of our office. We had a real copier too, which as a kid at that time was kind of a bonus. Didn't have to pay 10 cents at the library to copy pictures.
That's a good memory. Art, your journey reflects resilience in the face of racism and displacement. How do you hope Road to Justice will help young readers think about justice and belonging in Canada today? And maybe there's examples you want to share that from your book too.
Well, I think one of the things I really want to instill in kids is that it's important, first of all, to talk to each other, to learn about each other, because I think racism is something happens because we don't understand the other person. And so I really encourage people getting together. And I know with the Indigenous community, we've been involved in doing talking circles where we sit around and talk about experiences. And the fact that you can share those experiences helps, I think, other people understand you. So that's one thing. The second thing I'd like to instill in kids is that, you know, if there's an issue that you're concerned about, then take action, do something about it. And I remember as a teacher, I was teaching a grade 4 class along with a partner, and we really encouraged kids to be independent. And then our class one day decided to go on strike because the principal had locked the door. It was cold outside, kids had to wait outside, and they came in and they were so upset, and they said, "We're going on strike." And so that was a great learning opportunity, because we said, you know, if you go on strike, there's a whole process. You don't just walk away. You first have to appoint a leader, you negotiate, you try to work on arrangements and so on. And so we went through the whole process, and the kids are really good because you know, they got together, the group, they chose a leader, and the person spoke on behalf of the group and so on. At the end of the day, we got the issue resolved because they got frustrated with all the things that they had to go through. They decided it was much easier to just not complain anymore and get back to work. So finally, the leader says, "Well, we've decided not to go on strike anymore. We want to go back to work." And we said, "Well, you can, except there's one condition you have to meet. And that's to make up for all the work that you lost. And then you have to work the rest of the day as best you can, but get the work done." At that same day, in the afternoon, we had a group of teachers, 20 teachers visiting our classroom. And they came and they watched all these kids, and they're really working hard. And they said, "That's amazing. How can the kids be so good?" We didn't tell them the story of what happened beforehand. But it's interesting because as an adult, I was at university one day, and this kid came up to me and said, "You know, I was in your class. I remember the day we went on strike." So they learned something anyways. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. I think I'll take a page from that when my kids go on strike. And I want them to do something. That's great. So I just wondering also, like, what lessons do you think Japanese Canadian history offers to all Canadians, young and the elderly?
Well, I think one of the lessons and I think it even applies today, that our freedoms are pretty fragile at times. And in the case of Japanese Canadians, because of the war, even though the majority of people were born in Canada, they were considered enemies, mainly because we looked differently. And so we were labeled as enemy aliens, even though the majority of people were Canadians. And so that's important to remember. And so I think that we want to encourage kids to be able to understand how racism develops, what it entails, and what we can do about it if you encounter it. And so those are some of the skill types in current forward.
Thank you. Geoff, what do you hope young readers or illustrators understand, not only about history, but about the importance of listening to and carrying the stories of those who came before us?
Guess it is something that, I mean, it's good to know your family history and why, as he was saying with his parents, why they're angry or sad all the time, and because history does affect as we know, affects further generations as we go on. But I think nowadays too, I know in our community when I was president for a while, but we were doing a lot of family tree and connecting generation projects. We were trying to meld the youth with seniors or even the people with more experience in the community. And a lot of people were, I guess, really surprised about, a lot of people too, younger kids didn't know much about the whole internment and redress. And so it was eye-opening for a lot of people. And so it is important that they know that, because in school you don't exactly, as you were saying earlier, it's not exactly in all the textbooks, and that's not something you teach. There's so many different things in history, especially Canadian history. But it's a good way to connect within your own community, but in general, just find out.
I agree.
Your history.
And that goes across all culture, right? And for
for sure.
everyone's able to understand who they are, where they're coming from. I'm curious also, because I know you also did like your family crest from the book.
Oh,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
actually, I think my son Jesse, he did the cover of the big
what that process was like, because you talk about family and and I know in Japanese culture often there is that symbol that comes with it, like a family crest.
Yeah, because our crest is I guess it's like 3 trees.
Yeah.
To it. So
I think someone has the book here again.
yeah.
He just got it.
So that's the symbol of the
So
family.
it's sort of a stylized.
Miki, M-I-K-I, Miki means 3 trees in Japanese. So therefore the crest represents 3 trees. And so we use that as a family crest. And that's very common in Japan, by the way, where the surnames are made into a crest. It's a symbol.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, actually, my last name Lim also means trees and forests. And so I think there was a natural connection with art that I met, and so truly grateful for meeting him.
Well, I should mention a lot of Japanese names have nature
Yes.
in it.
Yeah.
In the surname, so there's that connection to nature, which is similar to the indigenous community as well. So it's interesting. There are a lot of connections.
Art, I know you mentioned about kind of the world as it is right now. Many youth today are growing up in a world marked by global conflict, climate anxiety, social division. What message do you hope stays with young readers long after they finish Road to Justice?
Well, you're right. We're facing a very difficult time where I think a lot of the norms that we took for granted are no longer being norms. And so as young people, we have to recognize that, and also to, I guess, encourage people to talk to each other, to respect each other, because we seem to be losing some of that aspect of it. And so I think schools are a great place to create that kind of respect. And so I think it's important in the education system to try to maintain that.
Mhm.
And but I think through the book too, it also demonstrates that sometimes things may be difficult to do, but if you persevere, you keep working at it, there is success at times. So.
Yeah. Because I know in your book you talked about a lot of the challenges, right? Even within the Japanese community, the Asian communities, and with media and everything like that. And so maybe there's something in there too that when you believe in something that you really just gotta follow through. And I think that's the idea of Ganon that you've exemplified in the book. So I guess this is for both of you, Art and Geoff. What's next for you? Are there any new projects or hopes you'd like to share with young people and educators that are?
Well, this is my first forte into the literature, I guess, as far as books go. And so I'd love to do something else, like a book cover or illustrations for it. This one kind of just fell in my lap because he was working on this, and at the same time I was working on a grant, and I was kind of not giving him the cold shoulder, but I was sort of hesitant to go into it because I knew it was going to take a lot of time. But I did get an extension on that grant. But I'm glad I really did it though, because it was lots of fun and really learned something. But it's something I've always wanted to be an illustrator though, and comic book artist or something graphic design like. So this is a good opportunity to do that, and it's always been a dream to have a cover of a book or an album cover or something that you can see on display in a bookstore like McDonald's.
So you're going to be working toward a graphic novel?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a graphic novel. Again, it's time consuming, and if I can find someone that wants to help me write it, it'd be good because I could draw it. And also, I guess my main thing is I want to have an art show, just to advertise myself, my other art besides this. Because as I said, I did a grant where it was all Walkmans or portable cassette players and cassettes and albums and stuff. So I have like 20 paintings and drawings and prints and everything else. And so I think it'd be a really good cohesive collection if anyone's interested in hosting.
Well, one of the things that I really like is the kind of sketching Geoff does. He's been doing a lot of hockey scenes and hockey players, and I look at those pictures and the fine details that's gone into all aspects of the uniform and all of those things. It's quite intriguing. And I know one of the things that I keep telling him he should use some of that to his advantage. He does a lot of the hockey scenes where people are in the background. And I was saying, well, maybe you could put people who, and we did this with one friend of ours, if he wanted his picture in the background of a painting. And so we did that.
Like in the crowd.
Yeah. And so I say, well, there's a niche right there. The other thing he does really well are pets, dogs and so on. It's just amazing. I look at them, they look so real. And the fine details, and he does it in pencil crayons or whatever, but it's amazing. And so, anyways.
FYI, if you want to see a really cool pet book, I just noticed there's one over there. It's called Dog Only Knows. And I follow that person on Instagram, and they do all these portraits of dogs and cats and stuff. Sort of done like old style Renaissance paintings where they're like in costumes and they're dressed up and they have these cool expressions on their faces. So just saw that there and might have to get that, but I don't want to advertise the commissions on pets.
Art, what about yourself? Yeah, what's up next for you? Any projects coming up?
Not that I know of. But right now, I'm glad to see so many people from Refit here because that's my project, right? It's survival. No. But the fact that it's important to keep fit and so on. So that's been my goal in the last number of years. And certainly I think it's really helped. But at this point in time, not really. Although I'm be going to Vancouver in August, and we're doing a little reading there at a festival. So.
And Art's still very active in the Asian community, especially with the Asian Heritage Society of Manitoba. So he's part of our board, and he still attends our meetings. And throughout this month, he'll be attending and doing lots of things. He's got a couple of kind of readings as well happening throughout the city. So so he's always moving. Just looking at our time, because we do want to open it up to the audience as well. Art, is there, or Geoff as well? Is there a message of gratitude or reflection we'd like to offer to our audience? Or at this time.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I asked some good questions. I'm sure you have some questions percolating in your minds right now, but I don't know, I think, again, it's a big thrill to come out and see everybody, and having the opportunity to illustrate this book was actually really worked out really well. I'm glad it looks pretty good too. But ask some questions, please.
Daniel, I think we're okay to go to ask audience questions now.
Well, I was going to just make one comment too. In the audience are a couple of people that I haven't seen for a long time, and we go back quite a bit in history. I think Geoff here was, I met him in Fort Francis, actually. He was with one of the government ministers. And this is going back over 20 years ago. And there's a fellow here that he's in the back. He became a Canadian citizen. And if you read the book Gaman, I have a story in there because he was one of the people that I did a special ceremony. He was going to take part in the marathon in the United States. He needed a citizenship, and so we had a special ceremony for him. And he became a Canadian citizen, he took part. But the interesting part of the whole story was that after the marathon in Manitoba, I opened up the Free Press one day, and then the front page was his picture with a Canadian flag draped over him. And what happened is that he, in the Manitoba Marathon, when he crossed the finish line, his girlfriend at the time was there, and they got married in the stadium that day in front of a number of people, around what, 4,000 people? And so when he came up today to say, tell me about that, I thought, oh God, that's great. Thank you for doing that. That was it's one of the stories that really has triggered in me a real appreciation for how people feel about Canada. And I think you told me at the time, he says, whenever you go and run someplace else, you'll always have a Canadian flag with you. And so I remember that loyalty to Canada. I kept saying he's a great Canadian ambassador. So thank you.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you. I think we're okay to open it up to the audience. Yes.
I'll make a statement first and then I'll ask a question. But actually, because yes, I met with Art at the citizenship board ceremony in Fort Francis 2001, 2002 around there.
Yeah.
And then later on, when I was a guidance counselor for the Massive Collegiate, I requested him to come do citizenship judge for our court. And we had the gym full of new Canadians, and Art had the entire gym stand up and take the citizenship oath. And our international students were looking at you and saying, "Are you Canadian now?" So I explained, no, you didn't sign the papers, you're not, but it's very special. But actually, Geoff, I know that when I hear Art talking about his son and how special he thinks you are, he's not saying explicitly, but he's at least calls it very indirectly. Clearly, he's proud of you as a son. Well, and I know what father-son relationships can be like. What's it like when your dad is a national hero and a historical figure in Canada, but he was just dad? And he says, "Can you do the illustrations for my book?" How's that process?
Yeah, I always turned it down too, so. Well, I guess when you put it that way, yeah, it was quite the honor to have him ask me that. But,
No, they still yell at me and everything else.
I played old timers hockey with him too, so. We thought we were brothers.
That's great. One over there.
Art, Miki, considering the persecution that you experienced as a child and the experience of the larger community of Japanese Canadians, where did you find your capacity for optimism in the face of that?
Well, thank you. I should mention Terry McLeod did the host for me when I did the reading back in 2024. So thank you, Terry, for being here.
Good to see you.
But anyways, in terms of my knowledge about our community, really, I learned about that much later on, because one of the things our community people didn't do was talk about the experience. Many of the young people growing up in Japanese Canadian families didn't have any idea why they were living in Manitoba. They had no knowledge of what happened to them. It was after I got, as an adult, got involved with our community that I began to find out about it. And up to that point, my parents never mentioned too much about that. But knowing and finding out about what happened to the Japanese, and also finding the research that led to us seeking redress, was the fact that once the government files were opened, 35 years after the war, documents began to show that what happened to Japanese Canadians should have never happened. It wasn't necessary. In fact, many of the top officials, such as the RCMP and the Army, said there's no need to remove the Japanese, they're not a threat. And yet it was a political action because of pressure from the BC government that our federal government listened to and eventually removed the Japanese from the West Coast. Mainly it was their ploy to get rid of the Japanese. And it was mainly because the Japanese were doing very well in certain areas such as fishing, farming, and there was this voice out there saying, we gotta get rid of those Japs because they're taking over. And that was essentially the reason why the Japanese were removed. So when I heard that aspect of it, it certainly was a motivation on our part and many young people to say, we can't let that happen. We can't let it pass by. And so this is where the motivation for the campaign began to come. And I'll tell you, initially within our own community, even our members of our own community kept saying to us, don't do that. We don't want this brought up again. And they were trying to, I guess, forget about the past, forget about what happened. And the fact that we started talking about it brought fear that there will be more racism directed towards them. And so there was a real reluctance of our own community to support us. In fact, we had hostile people against us. And yet, as the Canadian public began to become more sympathetic, and especially the media did a great job for us. Most of the reporters and so on would always paint positive pictures about why we're doing it. Mind you, we were such a small group, we were the underdog fighting the government, so we had a lot of support in that sense. And so that was what spurred us, and it went, you know, and in the end, it was the Canadian public that really pushed it. And we were able to get the support of the most of the unions of Canada, all the churches, the head churches, many companies, some provincial governments, and so on. It was through that coalition of Canadians that made the difference, that the Prime Minister eventually called us back to meet and get it resolved. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, great question, thank you.
So Art, your journey, as you talked about earlier with the accident that tore your face open, what were the cumulative events and teachings that you were given that allowed you to forgive? Spiritually, how did you become the leader that you are and have implemented a massive change in Canada through your actions?
It's a tough question. I guess the accident in some ways, because I often felt when I was growing up, because of the accident, I looked different to people. And so I could feel sometimes people being reluctant to associate with you. And you know, I mean, that's sort of a natural inclination when you see someone who's handicapped or whatever, you don't always, don't feel open or like be sensitive to those different, and that's the way I grew up, and I always felt that the fact that I survived, and I think about that quite often. Was there a purpose why I lived? That kind of reasoning thinking that takes place sometimes. And when I look back on my life, there have been many incidents of chance. I felt there were chance that took place that changed the focus of my life. And I could give you one example. When I became a school teacher, I had no inclination of ever becoming a teacher. So happened one day I met a high school friend that I haven't seen for 5 years. And as we were talking, he says, I have to rush. Why don't you come with me? We'll talk. And so I went with him, and we went to the Manitoba Teachers College, and I sat in on the meeting, and before I left that place, I signed up. Changed my life. Had I not met that person, I may not have ever done that. So it's interesting how your life changes just like that, and it's by chance. And that's happened several times in different places along my life. So I've been very fortunate in that sense that things have happened that's been positive for me. It's just I've become a citizenship judge too. It was something that I had not applied for. And one day I, at a meeting, I get called out of a meeting, and someone says, well, you better talk to this person because they're from Ottawa and they want to talk to you. So I get on the phone, and the woman says, I'm from the Privy Council. I said, oh, okay. And I said, congratulations, you've been appointed citizenship judge. I said, what? She says, oh, you didn't know about this? I said, no, I had no idea. Well, didn't you know that you're being considered? I said, no, no one ever told me. And it was just sad. And then she said to me, well, do you want the job or not? I said, yes. But it was that type of thing. It never occurred to me that I was even going to do that or whatever, but it turned out by chance. I found out later how that happened. And it was because the office that I was, citizenship office in Manitoba, the judge there had retired, and I guess someone from the office suggested they should contact me because I had done a few, volunteered to do some ceremonies for them previously. And they said they must have recommended me because I had no idea that would happen. But those are nice things that took place by chance. I always say by chance because it was something that I had not expected at all. Anyways, I'm talking too much.
No, I was gonna say that, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say one thing with the face ripping part. I'm glad you didn't ask me to draw a picture for that in the book, because after hearing you read about it, it's pretty gruesome for me.
If I may just add to that too, like I know Art, for me, like Art, I've known him for over 20 years now as well. I mean, he actually changed my life when I first met him. So it kind of goes, he just, one of the things that I know of Art is he always looks for the good. And he talked about that, right? Kind of looking for the good. And that's something I think that is contagious. And that's something that I know helps me in those tough situations to kind of what he has modeled in that relationship and what he has shown others as well. So yeah, just wanted to share that as well. Oh, I think there's one more.
I think we also have one. We have time for a couple questions too.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
I just wanted to firstly thank you for everything you did for the redress on behalf of my grandfather, Tommy Miet, and his family. With this past March was the 84th anniversary of the Japanese Canadians being in the internment camps. And I can attest that the Japanese family don't talk about the internment camps and what they went through. So I've been learning about my Japanese culture and what my grandfather and his family went through. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Two quick questions. First for Geoff, what's your favorite picture and why?
Favorite picture?
I mean, that you drew.
Oh. I would say maybe the one with the protesters holding the signs and then the Parliament Hill on top of it.
Why?
It's like kind of like technical drawing with the oh, here it is here. But it gave me a chance to kind of draw people sort of not cartoony, but sort of not too seriously. Some of the funny things they're saying, but these are actual signs that people had during the march, I guess. Yeah, in front of Parliament Hill.
What do the signs say?
Well, a couple of them are like enemy that never was, life in exile, or property was confiscated. Erase the shame. Hey, Maroni, it's cold out there. Right here. My sign? Oh, I didn't have a sign. No, I think John, did you do that Maroni one?
Yeah.
Is that you? I saw a photo of them. Anyways, so probably that one.
Are the originals, I mean, are there gonna be prints eventually made for sale?
Yeah, this is kind of, I guess, I wasn't involved in making these prints, but they are mainly for display purposes, I guess, for people to see it enlarged because they're so tiny in the book. Even now, I'm kind of, I can see the detail in there. No, they're closer to the original size. The originals are still quite a bit smaller. But, well, if there's a demand, we can make prints.
Well, some people here are asking whether they could buy it or. We hadn't planned to sell it, but if I guess if someone wants it, we could. The printing cost is about $5, so if you want to pay for that.
And I won't get you. In that case, we'll charge 50.
And he can sign it.
That should be worth a buck.
Stay tuned.
But anyways, yeah.
Well, I mean, a serious question too. You know, with all the property and things that were confiscated and then liquidated and then supposedly held in trust, but then not held in trust, all the possessions of the Japanese when they were interned, how could you possibly calculate all that? How did you add that all up to find out how much was supposedly gone?
Well, that question was raised by one of the ministers that we were dealing with. He said, how much did your community really lose? And you know, we couldn't answer that question. And so we decided to engage an accounting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to do the study. And then we found out that it would cost about $150,000 or more to do the study. We didn't have any money at all. And so we did some fundraising, but at that point in time, many of our community people didn't even support us. So it was very difficult to get fundraising. We raised about $30,000. And so we were thinking, well, we can't do it. We had a meeting with a person from Pricewaterhouse, and this is where chance comes in again. The president of Pricewaterhouse said to us, he said, you know what, my father was president of Pricewaterhouse during the war. And he often said, those people are Canadians, why are they being sent away? And he was quite upset about it. And so the son finally said to us, you know what, in my father's honor, we're prepared to do this if you just pay the upfront cost of $20,000 to $30,000. And so we agreed, and I said to him at that time, if we ever get redress, we'll pay for the whole thing. And so when we worked out the agreement with the government, and we're coming to fund, I said to the minister, and I said, there's one other bill that I would like to have included. And it's the accounting firm for $150,000 to Pricewaterhouse. And they said, okay. And so they paid for it in the end. But it was by chance that they decided to do it. And that became the most important part of our campaign in the end, because it quantified the amount of loss that took place. And they couldn't measure things like pain and suffering and all of those. All they could quantify is property losses. And basically it worked out to about $400 million or more. And the final agreement ended up being around $400 million to the government. So it's interesting how that study was very important in terms of determining our success. And but as I said again, those things happen by chance.
Thank you. I will ask, if I may, since their grandkids are here as well, I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna ask them a question actually. What does this book means to you?
Oh,
Your grandpa's
Okay.
book.
Hi, I'm like one of the granddaughters. You're like a granddaughter here, grandson. Yeah, I think it's really important to share the story. It's not just our family history, it's part of Canadian history. I feel very fortunate that I was able to grow up kind of learning as I went. And, as it's been kind of mentioned, when I was a kid, it wasn't taught in school. And I wanted to do my grade 6 speech project on Japanese Canadian redress. And my teacher took me aside and she said, I can't wait to hear about your red dress that you're going to talk about. She didn't know what I was talking about. So I feel like I had a really unique experience growing up, being able to learn my family history, and that, my grandpa didn't have that, fortunate to learn his family history as he was growing up. He had to learn a lot later. So I think this book is great, as well as the message of persevering and fighting for something that you believe in, whether it's something really big or even something small. I think it's important for kids to learn that you don't have to take no for an answer. Yeah, well, Jesse.
And also like bridging connections between the older and younger generations, etc. And it's good to have more resources available because there just aren't, like you said. And the other year during a Christmas, there was an old man that I was talking to that said, "Oh, it was good that the internment happened because it made the Japanese better workers." And none of the people that could say anything against this man were in the room at the time. So I had to politely take it and say snide things back. But then next year, I was able to give him my grandpa's book as a Christmas present. And I got my grandpa to sign it. And it was like, this is part of all of our histories. And it was, it's good to have resources to give to people that need it the most. So thank you.
And this newest book is easier to read, and it's a simplified version of the other one's a long read, but it's way more detailed.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Yeah, any more?
You want to say?
I will be in the book world just is. And I liked the talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're about time to go to the signing portion of the evening if you haven't already got it signed, but let's give a round of applause to our panel today. So how the signing will work is that it's going to take place right over here on my right. Feel free to have a book signed before you pay for it. As long as you pay for it before you leave, it's the big thing to think about. I'll be milling about too, just gathering some more books for the signing portion, as well as just moving some things over just to make things a little bit more accessible. But again, let's give another big thank you to everybody here. Fortunate for coming to host. For being here and writing this fantastic book and illustrating it. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Oh, yeah.